Why does football feel robotic? Why do we rarely ever see genius individual pieces of brilliance? The game is too overcoached. Football is becoming too automated. Gone are the days of Ronaldinho and Neymar. The flair has gone. Many coaches do not give their players the freedom to test the limits of their creativity. Will we ever see another Maverick again?
The best player on the planet at the moment.
Cristiano, encara a sumar, Cristiano por dentro, por fuera, Cristiano, golazo! ¡Qué arriba!
Flawed, 76% probability of missing the target. Reckless, 50% chance of failure. And this is not an acceptable way to arrive at training. Even the greatest players of our time make mistakes. They take too many risks. After all, they're only human. But what if they weren't? I give you the future of football, our clones. Flawless decision-making, guaranteed results. It's what the people want. Football just changed.
Has that Nike advert become real life? Are academies restricting creativity? Let me take you back 11 years ago. On the night when Suarez scored 4 goals for Liverpool versus Norwich, all goals were good enough to win Goal of the Month. So why did I bring up Suarez instead of Ronaldinho or Vinicius? Dennis Bergkamp coached him, and I read from Bergkamp's book, Stillness and Speed. Suarez is fascinating because he is something almost unseen in English football. He is unorthodox, to say the least, and has moments where he crosses the line. Yet there is something remarkable about Suarez. More on that later. There has been some stern criticism about the English school system and how poorly it performs against other countries around the world. What is the problem? Ancient teaching methods. The acquisition of knowledge, yet a lack of application? It would appear that there is a lack of modernity to the approach. Quite simply, there is a lack of drive, dedication, and investment in learning. This is not too far away from England's ability to compete with many of the top nations regarding football. The frustration of England's youth development, the seeming lack of progress, and of course, England's inability to compete with the top nations, as well as those with small populations in Portugal and Croatia, point to serious issues. Where's the creativity? Perhaps the issue in both school and football is that there is a distinct lack of creativity and freedom of expression afforded to English students. England has always been very structured, regimented, and analytical in its approach. This is seen in the school system, which has been taken into the world of football development. In an excellent talk from Ken Robinson titled, How Schools Kill Creativity.
What we do know is, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. If you're not prepared to be wrong. And by the time they get to be adults, most kids have lost that capacity. They have become frightened of being wrong.
He discusses how pupils who possess creative flair, or for schools, should I say, disruptive attitudes, are attempted to be changed to fit the norm. School, he argues, is a place to develop university lecturers, and little else. The system neglects and laments creativity, much like English football has done for decades. Skill, expression, and creativity have been looked at negatively by an FA who valued structure, organization, and conformity. A coaching culture was developed with these ideas and beliefs, which meant England developed players whose skill and creativity were often coached out of them. When we wonder why we lack players with skill, then we must look at our coaching culture. It would appear that the academy system has generally been a place where skill is diminished. Much like schools, players are often coached to limit their skill and craft. Coached not to try things and not make mistakes. Academies like the school system have become a place of conformity. If you don't fit in with what is asked, then you are released. However, some of the greatest players, the genius of the game, were often non-conformists. They had their own way and style. Without encouraging audacity, creativity, inventiveness, and enjoyment, you'll never produce a true footballing great. The country that created the game has their ideas and footballing culture entirely backwards. And it's not just in England. Dennis Bergkamp, in his excellent book, discusses his concerns with the overcoaching of players in academies. If you look at the coaches we have now, they're so different. They all have their badges, are very sympathetic, and know exactly how to play football, what kind of exercises you should do, and for how many minutes, and the distances between the goals, and where the cones should be where you're playing positional games. And they know not to play too long, 1.5 hours maximum. Maybe that's the problem. We never had that sort of attention, so we were more self-taught. Even with all the shouting, you just created your own thing. He makes the point that this culture has produced players who struggle to make their own decisions, and when confronted with a problem of which they have not been introduced, look to the side for answers instead of seeking to solve it themselves. It was really quite free for you to teach yourself. There is no shouting or military guys anymore, but it's more strict in a football sense. Everything is done by the book. Is it too much? Probably. Everything is done for the kids now. They're picked up from school by minivans. The food is there, the teaching is there, everything. How can they develop themselves if everything is done for them? As soon as it's a bit different, it's oh no, I don't know what to do. You see them looking at the bench to find out what they should do. And this is where we bring in Luis Suarez. Bergkamp makes reference to when Luis Suarez was at Ajax and how unorthodox he was. He points out that he was evidently not a product of these football schools and environments. He was raw, rugged, and tenacious. He would do things to win which many coaches across Europe would perhaps not approve of. You can see the difference with Luis Suarez when he was here at Ajax. Of course, maybe you wouldn't agree with the things he did, but he was always trying to create something. Always thinking. How can I get the best from this situation? Do I have to pull the shirt of his defender to get in front of him? Do I get out of position to control the ball? His mind is always busy thinking. He's very creative. It begs the question that if Suarez had developed in one of Europe's academies, would he be the player he is now? Would he even have made it? A player like Suarez has made Bergkamp reassess what Ajax is doing with their youngsters. He worries they had gone too far in overcoaching and structuring the sessions. Therefore, he says, that's one of the things we try to do with the training now with the youth. Give players the chance to develop themselves into creative, special, unique individuals. We can't copy what we had in the past. Somehow we have to find a different way. So the players who come into the first team are creative again, can think for themselves, and can make a difference. Be special. Be unique. That's what we want. Right now, there is an argument as to who is the best player in the world, Mbappe or Vinicius. For me, it is Mbappe, yet I love Vinicius too. Both are unorthodox, skillful, creative, and very effective. The fact both come from France and Brazil is not surprising. Players develop in these countries through a street football environment. Through futsal-type games, the players develop their skills and creativity, yet most importantly, their intelligence and decision-making. Most think that street football is about producing tricks and flips for highlight reels. But its true benefit is plenty of touches and opportunities to develop problem-solving skills and personality in a small or irregular format. Street football places players of different ages together, which can be very challenging for younger ones, but can be a platform to stimulate growth, efficiency of play, and creativity for those with talent. Also emphasizes one-on-ones, small spaces, and irregular situations. Did you know that in 2013, Japanese scientists performed an MRI scan on Neymar's brain and discovered that his brain activity is low during games, meaning he plays on autopilot and doesn't think much. In Japanese, they call this mushin. Mushin is achieved when the mind is free from negative thinking, anger, fear, and ego. Some studies show your creativity goes up by 400% when in flow state. Coaches allow players to express and try things as youngsters because the products coming out of South America and the suburbs of Paris possess these kinds of skills. As well as this, these players have ruthlessness, a desire and tenacity which other nations don't have. Why? Because it is coached out of them in academies. In academies, they are too pampered and provide such a nice environment in which to develop. The nice players are those who often make it. Yet, is there not a concern that the academy system is simply developing one type of player? In the same way, Robinson argues the school system is there to simply develop one type of person? Do we not wish to be more creative with how we develop, recruit, and promote players? Now I'm going to take you to the start of when creativity officially perished in football. The start of the 2016-17 Premier League season was hotly anticipated for two reasons. The first and most obvious is the ocean of wealth now surging to every Premier League team in light of the new record £5.14 billion TV rights deal. The English top flight is now so flush with revenue and potential that 13 of the 20 Premier League teams broke their transfer records that summer. But this only tells half the tale. The other shining light that has drawn audiences back to the Premier League after a summer saturated with international and Olympic sports is the influx of some of the world's most gifted and charismatic managers now lining up as adversaries for the first time. Liverpool enticed Jurgen Klopp to reignite Anfield and return the famous club to its former glories. Manchester United, a dismal disappointment under former charges David Moyes and Louis van Gaal, relented in their quest for silverware and opted for the tried and tested Jose Mourinho, an almost guaranteed winner. Meanwhile, the blue half of Manchester rejoiced in the appointment of arguably the greatest coup of them all, as former Barcelona and Bayern manager Pep Guardiola arrived on English shores to continue his own phenomenal coaching career. As Mourinho and Guardiola continued their personal rivalry, this time in the Premier League, in one of the most eagerly anticipated local derbies for some time, it was Manchester City who prevailed, as the Spaniard once again tasted victory against his old nemesis with a pulsating 2-1 win. But while all eyes were drawn to the battle of the Premier League's latest superpowers, a closer look at the game itself reveals the subtle nuances of this fascinating tactical encounter, and sheds more light on one of the game's fastest-growing debates. During their win over United, City players covered a total of 119.63 kilometers, whereas in comparison, Mourinho's team covered only 111.34 kilometers. Clearly, for all the adulation and praise for his tactical innovation on the field, and rightly so, Guardiola also demands total commitment off the pitch, ensuring his players are at peak performance and are capable of fulfilling the exhaustive physical demands that his relentless possession-based system requires. And the Spaniard is not the only manager to place his faith in a high-octane approach. Tottenham were taken to a new level under the tutelage of Mauricio Pochettino, with a blend of astute transfer dealings, a few phenomenal young players beginning to flourish, and an intense pressing style of football aimed at recovering the ball as quickly as they lose it, and harassing their opponents into mistakes. Leicester won the league the season before, utilizing a formidable counter-attacking approach that specialized in them sacrificing possession in return for a lethal and devastating break of speed to intercept their opposition and a ruthless streak to ensure they capitalized on their chances when they came. Liverpool had also begun to foster the now infamous gegenpressing style that became the hallmark of Klopp's supremely talented Dortmund team. A high-intensity, rock-and-roll approach to football aimed at retrieving the ball, using the ball, and attacking at high intensity. Harass and pressurize the opponents, and eventually they will make a mistake. And these teams are not alone in their physical sentiments. Pochettino's Argentinian counterpart, Marcelo Bielsa, is one of the game's most cherished innovators and characters, and is well known for utilizing a similarly taxing strategy. Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid are regarded as arguably Europe's hardest-working team, resolute defensively and capable of reducing most teams to a shadow of their former selves, broken by Atletico Madrid's physical superiority. It's not just a European trend either. The roots of this fast and furious obsession reach as far out as South America, where managers like Jorge Sampaoli adopted and fostered the energetic approach of his predecessors with the Chilean national side, with great success. Notice with nearly all the club sides mentioned, the manager is arguably the most famous person in the team. The new face of the team. This was the beginning of the tactical era. Football, it seems, is evolving. Gone are the days when players could float through games as effervescent talents. The gentleman's game? When goals were technically proficient and physically adequate. Nothing more, nothing less. But the game is changing. Society is changing. And so is our understanding of both the human body and what a professional sportsman can and should achieve. Sports science has pushed the boundaries of what is physically possible beyond previous limits, and nutrition has evolved so drastically that it is beyond recognition compared to the former glories of previous generations. Ice baths are now common past-match tonics, not pints of milk. In the modern game, every single element of a player's pre-match, post-match, and everyday life is scrutinized down to the minutest detail to ensure a player is capable of turning in their best performances when it matters. Diet, weight, and even sleep is all constantly monitored and recorded in the hope of providing the faintest edge against the competition. One example of this obsession being taken so seriously is in 2013, when Real Madrid went as far as to invite elite sport sleep coach Nick Littlehales to the club to deliver a workshop to manager Carlo Ancelotti and his squad to explain the benefits of guarding against fatigue. And they are not alone in their obsessive attention to detail. Teams have been known to travel to away game hotels with specially tailored mattresses for each player to ensure they receive the necessary amount of sleep required to maximize their recovery between games. When they are in their own homes, they'll look on websites such as Sleepify to help them find the best mattresses to aid in their games. Players' performances in training and matches are constantly recorded to give the club an unprecedented amount of statistical data aimed at keeping them in maximum physical condition and ensuring they can cope with the rigors that professional football places on the human body. These are all examples of football's recent pursuit of marginal gains as clubs are increasingly turning to the most unlikely sources and focusing on the smallest details to give themselves an advantage. Football is not the only sport where sleeping patterns and data analysis are quickly becoming the backbone of a player's off-the-field regime. Put simply, sleep matters. Other athletes, such as Roger Federer and basketball star LeBron James, are both known advocates of getting sufficient amounts of sleep per night, and their attitudes are supported by research showing that performance is indeed benefited by sufficient rest. The message, then, is clear. And the benefits are becoming increasingly profound in a sport where even the slightest advantage can be the difference between winning and losing. Many of them actually have nutritionists that ensure they're eating all of the right foods. Additionally, nutritionists can recommend supplements to them, too. To keep an athlete's immune system strong, some nutritionists might suggest that they take a supplement like liposomal C vitamin. That is known to increase immune function, helping people to remain healthy. Some athletes will make use of supplements like that to help them stay in top condition. For some athletes, they may go for stronger supplements to see how they deal with them. Fitness, therefore, has never been more crucial for a player to succeed at a time when they are required to run further and harder than ever before. In light of the growing physicality of professional football, and the exponential growth of sports science in the preparation and recovery of a player's short career. One must ask, has the focus shifted to what teams now desire from technique and creativity to athleticism and tactics? Are the physical qualities of a player, his stamina to endure, and his ability to match the rigorous demands of top-flight football in the professional game now a more sought-after commodity than the beautiful technique that has graced the game in previous generations, often matched disproportionately by their lack of physical conditioning? But for all the clamor for the latest scientific breakthrough in sports sciences, we must remember that the game was founded on an appreciation of technical ability. An appreciation for the ball and a feel for the game. One can be trained to run 11 kilometers twice a week, but the desire and determination to be there when the ball arrives cannot be taught. Like the vision to execute the pass that splits a defense, or the bravery to keep pushing forward in a mazy dribble. To have the foresight to anticipate when a player will move, or to have the imagination and speed of thought to execute the perfect skill to ghost past your defender. These are all raw instincts that cannot be taught and are what separates the truly gifted from the rest. In the modern era, most players were at academies at 10 years old. So the wonder kids we've seen over the last 6 to 7 years have been programmed to make the quote-unquote correct decisions instead of superfluous decisions to impress the average supporter or embarrass the opposition. So, is football becoming dominated by athleticism and tactics? Or has athleticism always been the #1 attribute in football? Before you go, check out our video on how Vinicius is single-handedly saving Joga Bonito.